Hello, and welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and gunfighting from a Judeo-Christian moral and ethical worldview and first-hand real-world experience. As always, I am your host, Michael Melito. First and foremost, I am a Christian. God is first and foremost in my life and everything that I do, and I make no apologies for that. You don't have to be a Christian to listen, just know that I come at everything from that perspective. A little bit about me and my bio. If you want to skip it, you can skip to about 3.5 minutes in. That'll usually be about the end of the bio. I grew up hunting and shooting at a very early age. I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I did a couple of combat tours in Iraq where by God's grace, I made it back in one piece when a lot of other good men did not, both mentally and physically. After my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. After my time in the Marine Corps, I went to work for LAPD, where I worked some of the nastiest streets in the country. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments, and again, by God's grace, He got me through that in one piece, not because I'm anything special, but because He chose to have mercy on me. I also served in the United States Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a private contractor for the federal government. I've been a professional firearms instructor, NRA certified, NRA, FBI, a couple of other certifications. I've taught at one of the biggest private shooting schools in the country. I have taught civilians, military, and law enforcement shooting for a lot of years, firearms instruction. Even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17, I started competition shooting. I've been very blessed with a lot of talents in shooting. I've won more shooting competitions than I can remember. Anything from more precise rifle bullseye style matches to action pistol and steel challenge style matches. I've competed in IDPA, USPSA. I've also competed in other things, muzzleloader, archery, shotgun. I was very blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a very large metropolitan area where our primary job was to stop active shooters. I've also been a professional hunter and guide, which is getting into the topic of today's discussion. Like I said, I grew up hunting at a very early age. I've been very blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, anything from prairie dogs to American bison, to wolf, to bear, to white-tailed deer on the East Coast, mule deer on the West Coast. And as I mentioned, I did that professionally as a professional hunter and guide. Today's topic is going to be entitled Lessons Learned from Being a Professional Hunter and Guide. Now, if hunting's not your thing, if you're just strictly a tactical shooter, I still think you'll get a lot out of today's episode. And I would encourage you, if you've never hunted, to get out there and do it. I think it's a manly pursuit and a noble skill worth having to be able to put food on the table in good times and bad times. One of the primary things I saw as a professional hunter and guide when people came was over-magnification of their optics. Most people today hunt with a scope on the rifle, which is a fine thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of them get way too much magnification in two different ways. One, the scopes are just bigger than what they need and more powerful than what they need, and they keep it dialed up on too high magnification. See, a lot of people, I think, when they go to sight in their rifle, they go to a bench and they sit the rifle on a bench. And they want to get as, a nice group as they can, so they dial really high up on that magnification with a gun in a vise, taking out as much movement as possible. And that's fine. Shooting like that is a fine thing, and it's a fine skill, and it's a good way to get your rifle dialed in. But you're likely not going to hunt out of a vise. And let's first understand that no matter what magnification you put on your rifle, it doesn't make the rifle any more accurate. If you have a 1 MOA gun, that is a gun that shoots 1 inch at 100 yards, doesn't matter whether you put a 1x scope or a 2x scope or a 10x scope or a 20x scope. That rifle, given the same rifle and same ammunition, is still going to shoot 1 inch at 100 yards. The optic doesn't make it any more accurate. What the optic does is let you see your target better. But there's no free lunch there. The more magnification you have, generally, the longer it's going to take you to acquire your target. And I should say there's a lot of different ways to hunt, but my preferred way to hunt and guide is to spot and stalk or still hunt. which is a more primitive, you read the land, you read the animals, you read the weather, you try and walk up, stalk up on an animal and take its life. And in what I would consider more realistic hunting situations, those big giant scopes are more of a hindrance than a help. And the other thing is, whatever magnification your scope has, leave it if you're hunting on the lowest power. If you have to take a quick shot, you're going to want to find your target quickly. And the lower magnification you have, the quicker you're going to be able to acquire that target, generally speaking. So leave your scope on whatever the lowest power is. If you have to take a really long, precise shot, and you really need that magnification to see your target because it's so far away, then you'll probably have the time to dial the magnification up on your scope. But if that animal jumps up close, you're probably not going to have time to dial back on your magnification. So if you're going hunting, leave your optic on the lowest setting that you have. I have 2 rifles that I have generally set up for professional hunting and guiding. Well, I have more than that, but my 2 go-to, I have set up with a 1.5 to 4 and a 1.5 to 5, which is what most people would consider very, very low magnification for a hunting rifle. But I think in my experience that more people miss game in the fact that they have too high magnification and it takes them too long and they miss an opportunity to take game than they just, have a great shot but they can't make it because they don't have enough magnification. I've never seen that be a thing. Generally, if you can't hit it with 4x, you probably can't hit it. Unless we're talking about some really long range, out west, dialed in hunting where you have like ballistic turrets and things like that. And I'm not knocking that kind of hunting, but that's not what I'm talking about. If you do that kind of hunting, you probably know that this doesn't apply to you. But if you're doing that kind of hunting that most people do and that most game is taken well within 300 yards and you have your rifle set up right, zeroed at the right range, then anywhere from, as close as you're probably going to shoot out to 250 yards, you aim, at the center of the vital zone of that animal, and that's it. And for that, those lower power scopes, I think, are a lot more help than a big high-powered scope. So that's lesson number 1. Don't get the over-magnification. Hunting, especially spot and stalk or still hunting, is not bench rest shooting. Number 2 ties into this. Get off the bench. Okay, a lot of guys want to sit there and brag about how small a group they can shoot on a bench. And I get it. I like to shoot small groups on benches too. That's a very good skill to have as a hunter and as a shooter. But unless you're hunting somewhere like over a feeder in some kind of blind with a rest, which is not the kind of hunting that I like to do, unless you're doing that, you're not going to shoot off a bench. Especially in spot and stalk hunting. You're most likely going to shoot offhand or kneeling or prone or like supported on a tree, or with a hasty sling. So if that's how one expects to encounter game, that's how one should practice. It is important to get set up on a bench and get your rifle sighted in. That way if you're shooting, if you know your rifle sighted on a bench and you're dead on the bench, if you practice and you're pulling shots high, low, left, right, then you know it's something that you're doing because your rifle is set up right. But after you get it zeroed in, get off the bench. Even if you just get off the bench and practice with a 22, shooting from standing, from kneeling, from sitting, from prone, practicing with your, hand placed up against a tree, leaning into it. One of the most common, you can call it reasons, excuses, whatever, things you hear as a professional hunter is, I just didn't have a shot. Well, no, you probably had a shot. Maybe your rifle was on too high a magnification and you didn't have time to get the reticle on the target, but you could have if you had a proper magnification or proper scope, or you would have had a shot if you had been better at shooting offhand or shooting kneeling or shooting leaned up against a tree. So that sometimes you just don't have a shot. But a lot of times you would have had a shot if you'd have had the skill. And hunting is a lot more about skill and fieldcraft than it is about having a big fancy scope or being able to shoot a little tiny group off a bench under ideal conditions with your gun clamped into a vise. Another lesson I learned being a professional hunter and guide is you don't want everything camo. Two good examples is my iPhone case I have in red, and my go-to EDC knife, a Buck 110 Slim, I have the handle in a bright red. Because, if it's in leaves or you're doing something and you set it down or you drop it, you don't want your, phone case camo. You don't want your knife camo. You want to be able to find them easily. You want a bright orange handle or a bright whatever colored handle. A flashlight. You probably don't want a camo flashlight because if you drop it, especially in low light, you want to be able to see it. So don't make the mistake of thinking that everything has to be camo. And a lot of times it's better to have things not in camo. Little pro tip, if you have something like that is camo, go to Walmart and get some bright orange duct tape or some glow-in-the-dark tape or something like that and put it on your item so that you can find it if you drop it in the leaves, in the woods, in the dark. Another lesson learned: fieldcraft over stuff if you want to be a successful hunter. Jesus says the abundance of a man's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. There's nothing wrong with having nice stuff. Jesus himself also said, if you do not have a sword, let he who has no sword sell his garment and buy one. It's nice to have nice things. There's nothing wrong with that. But fieldcraft and hunting, having skill is so much more important than having the latest, greatest, fanciest thing over something that is good, but that you've practiced with. A quintessential example of this is boots. You could have the nicest, whatever, I don't want to get into name brands, but there's some really, really good boot brands out there that cost a lot of money. And they're good boots. But the nicest boots you can buy aren't going to help you stalk up on an animal if you don't know how to walk quietly in the woods. If you don't know how to read the land and where to walk. They can be the best boots in the world, but if you go tromping through a patch of, dry leaves, you're better off with a pair of $20 Walmart boots and getting in the woods and practicing being quiet and walking, knowing when you feel a stick under your feet to, hey, stop taking that step and back off. Or, hey, this is a gravel road with leaves on the side. I don't want to walk on the gravel. I don't want to walk on the leaves. Let me walk right in the edge where the leaves are kind of mashed up and I'm not on the gravel because that's the quietest place to walk. The nicest scent lock, camo stuff, scent eliminator is fine. But can you read the wind? Do you know how to watch those big game animals and watch their movements when you're stalking on them and realize they smell something not quite right, or that canyon is going to draw my wind down there. I had better find another way. You might have the nicest, most expensive, super accurate rifle, but do you know how to find your natural point of aim? Do you know how to snap in with a hasty sling? Better off with, a 3 MOA gun, which most, modern hunters would think, is wildly inaccurate. But if you can shoot, 3 inches 100 yards, you can shoot 6 inches at 200 yards. And I'd rather have a guy with that rifle that's good and can make good standing offhand shots that can just throw that rifle up and consistently hit in a 6-inch circle at 200 yards in a few seconds than the guy with the super accurate rifle that's only ever shot on a bench. Because I don't know about you, but I don't take a bench rest when I go hunting. Nothing wrong with having a super nice accurate rifle. But better that you know how to shoot your rifle, whatever it is. You may have time to get a nice pack and roll up and get a rest or, bust out some shooting sticks. There's all kinds of camo patterns, and there's great camo patterns. But I'd rather have the guy that's got a pair of old, BDU woodland camo that's decades old, that's faded out, that knows how to be still and move slowly, than a guy with the fanciest, latest, greatest, brand new 2021 camo pattern that's fidgety, always touching his face. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with having nice stuff. I have a lot of nice stuff. I'm very blessed to have a lot of really nice guns. But better that you know how to use it. Skill over stuff. Next thing we're going to talk about is ammo selection. And like I said, if you're not a hunter, you can apply a lot of these things to the tactical world, to the gunfighting world. But what is hunting if not a gunfight for food? But ammo selection. I like ammo selection. I like to nerd out and geek out on ammo selection. And I realize I'm doing this in, the gun ammo apocalypse of 2020, 2021. So things are a little different now. Hopefully they get back to normal soon, guys. I hear you on that. But there's a lot of great ammo innovations. But make sure that you can afford and get out and shoot and practice with that ammo. If the ammo that you've chosen is so hard to get or so expensive that you shoot 1 or 2 or 5 rounds of it to get it zeroed on a bench and then you don't want to practice with it, better off going with one of the good name brands. There's this, the big 3, the big 4 ammo companies. A good name brand, and go with their, not like Full Metal Jacket ammo, but their good soft point, let's call it value hunting ammo that you can actually get out and practice with, than some super crazy ammo that costs you, 3 or 4 times as much that you're not going to get out there and shoot and practice with. Also, what are you trying to do? I love BCs and sectional density. Like I said, I'm all about nerding out over ammo stuff. If you're doing, in the kind of hunting that most people do on big game, shooting under 300 yards, is BC really that important? And I just said that. I know the whole tactical community and the hunting community is like big on super long, super high BCs, and that's great. There's good to be had for having high BCs and high sectional density. If all things are equal, I'll take those. But I'd rather have a round that I can go to Walmart and get and afford to shoot and practice with. Next thing I'll talk about in ammo, is it accurate in your gun? Because it doesn't matter how good it is in somebody else's gun. It doesn't matter what I say that I like to shoot in my gun or what some hunter on TV likes to shoot in his gun. That doesn't mean it's going to group well in your gun. If you're going deer hunting, in my opinion, better to be the guy with the 243 or the 30-30 with the good soft point, round that's been around for decades that's proven, that goes out and shoots and practices, than the guy with the super hot, ultra mega magnum with the ammo that's so expensive and that hurts him so much when he shoots that he has shot it a couple of times and it sits in his gun safe all year. Same way with a gun. What's best for you? What kind of hunting are you doing? That 10-pound bull barrel super accurate rifle might be great off a bench. It might be great if you're hunting out of a box blind, but if you're walking around the woods, especially out west, somewhere like the Sawtooth Wilderness, hiking up and down mountains all day, is that really the rifle that you want? The next lesson of being a professional hunter and guide, and this goes for most shooting, know when not to shoot. Assuming that your gun is sighted in, whether it's a handgun or a rifle, watch that front sight or watch that reticle, watch the crosshairs in that scope. Assuming your gun's not broken and it's sighted in, that bullet is going to go where those crosshairs are, where that front sight is. And if not, it's because you moved it. So watch those crosshairs, focus on those. Learn to call your shots. One of the quick litmus tests for hunting is, are your crosshairs staying in the vital zone of that animal? And if they are, you can make that shot. It doesn't matter if it's for you 50 yards standing or 200 yards kneeling. If your crosshairs are staying on the vitals of that animal while you're squeezing the trigger, then you can make that shot. And if not, then don't pull the trigger. If your crosshairs keep barely staying in the vital zone, there's a good chance you're not going to make that shot and you're going to wound or miss that animal. I'd much rather somebody not take a shot than wound an animal and have it suffer. The next big thing is caliber. If you're new to hunting or new to shooting, stay away from magnums. And in general, my advice would be stay away from magnums. If you're a very avid hunter, and you hunt big dangerous game, then yeah, magnums may have a place. But especially if you're hunting like east of the Mississippi, deer-sized game and under, I'd rather you get a regular round, a 308, a 243, a 30-30, a 35 Remington, and practice and put rounds down range. I don't know about you, but I don't like shooting 50 rounds through a 300 Winchester Magnum or a 7mm Remington Magnum. I don't like shooting 5 rounds through them. And if you get a good shot, barring all but the biggest, most dangerous game, if you get a good shot in the vitals with a 308, with a decent, not even super expensive, but a decent proven hunting round, you can kill that animal. There's no magnum so big and so powerful that if you get a horrible shot, the animal is just going to fall over and flop over because you shot a magnum at it. Whether it's hunting or tactical shooting, shot placement is far more important than caliber. I want to tie that back to the Bible. Look at David and Goliath, a sling and a stone, but it was a good shot. On that note, lessons learned from being a professional hunter and guide. If you shoot, even if it was a good shot, if that animal is still on its feet, if you can shoot it again, shoot it again. Get in the habit. Whether it's hunting or tactical shooting or whatever, if it's a manual operated firearm like a bolt action rifle, when you break that shot and your follow through is done, get another round in that gun as soon as you can and acquire your target again. Even if you don't have to shoot again, be ready to shoot again. And like I said, even if you know that it was a good shot, if the animal is still on its feet and you can get another shot in it, put another shot in it. I've seen animals with really good shots and, taking out vital organs, and they still manage to run. An animal's will to live at times can be, to say the least, impressive. There's no guarantee that that animal is just going to fall over and die. So like I said, if you can get another shot in it, get another shot in it. I've seen massive, alpha male bison shot with one arrow and didn't go very far and fell over dead. Like I said, with one arrow. And I've seen much smaller animals like a ram, a sheep, shot with a magnum and kept going, like with a 300 Win Mag, and kept going. You can get another shot in it, put another shot in it. The next thing we'll talk about is the cold bore. Now, a lot of people going back to sighting in and shooting off the bench, they make the mistake of getting the rifle sighted in. They may shoot 3, 4, 5 shots. They get, their gun sighted in right on the bullseye, and then they put their gun away. Or even worse, they clean their bore. They put their gun away, go home, clean it later, and then go out and go hunting. For most rifles, your cold bore shot is going to be different than after you shoot it up on a warmed up barrel, especially after shooting, 3, 5, or even more shots off a bench in a fairly short amount of time to warm that barrel up. Your point of aim, point of impact is going to change. And when you go hunting, hopefully, your first shot is all that you need, and your first shot is the most important one, and you need to know where that first shot goes. And that's going to be a cold bore shot. So, like I said, lessons learned from doing this professionally. Shoot your rifle, get it sighted in, and then let it sit for whatever the temperature is, however long it takes to get that barrel to whatever temperature it is outside. Let it cool down, and then confirm your cold bore shot. It could be quite different. And your cold bore is what you want my advice would be is to get your cold bore where your rifle is zeroed for. It may take time. You may have to shoot one shot and adjust and then come back an hour later and shoot one more shot. But what good is it really going to do you to know that your rifle's zeroed for a barrel that's had 5 rounds to it shot rapidly? Because you're probably not going to do that when you're hunting. So get your cold bore zero, get your cold bore dope, and confirm that. And have that set for your hunting rifle. So get that rifle zeroed, get it zeroed, know your cold bore shots, and then get off the bench and get some practicing in so you know what that dope is. A good dry fire drill you can do for hunting. Yes, you can dry fire practice even with your bolt action rifle to get ready for hunting. Once your rifle is zeroed, practice getting in those different common positions. Not off a bench, but standing freehand. standing using a sling. Know how to wrap that sling around your arm to get that proper support. Know how to get in a good stable kneeling position. Use a door frame in your house or whatever for simulating leaning up against a tree with your hand, making a hasty rest for your rifle and taking those shots. And then a real good thing to practice is taking your time and getting that real good first shot, and then cycling that rifle as quickly as you can, whether it's a bolt action, a lever action, whatever, and getting that rifle and your sights back on the target. So try and make your first shot on whatever your target is as precise as you can get it. And then your second shot, decide what the kill zone is on that target and get a second shot in it as quickly as you can. Because if you get up and you get ready and you get another good shot in, that's great. If you do it in real life and you get your gun back in action and you get back on the sights and your animal's already laid over and you don't have to take a second shot, great. But if you get back on your sights and that animal's heading over a ridgeline where you might not find it, or into some fallen timber, or into a swamp, you want to get another round in it. And a final lesson on that note from being a professional hunter and guide is don't just think about the moment up to the shot. Think about everything that happens afterwards too and be ready. Like I said, it's not all about gear, but you do need some gear. So, if you're going out hunting, unless you're like hunting in your backyard where you can just walk back to the house, but if you're hunting somewhere, in the wilderness, have in your pack, have game bags, have a couple of decent knives, have something to mark a blood trail in case that animal didn't drop right away and you have to track it. Have a flashlight. Have a backup flashlight. That's a lesson I learned the hard way. You think you're not going out for that long and then you wound an animal or something and you're stuck out there well late into the night until you finally find it and you get it butchered and then you're halfway done and then your light goes out or something like that. By God's grace, I didn't die, but I came very close to dying one time in the wilderness because I went out with one flashlight and I lost my flashlight and I was trying to make it back and I walked off a cliff and I fell quite a ways and was barely stopped by a tree hanging out of the side of this cliff. I had lost my flashlight sometime during the day and I was trying to walk in the middle of the night in a place I was unfamiliar with in some pretty steep terrain in a very remote area in Idaho. Don't just think about the shooting of the deer or the elk or whatever it is. Think about all the things that come after. Think about what if you have to track that deer. Think about how you're going to get it out. I remember growing up on the East Coast and hunting and shooting a deer and everything's relatively flat. And then I go, out to Idaho and the first time I shot an elk and walked up on it and I was like, oh, that's a big animal. So have plans for all that. Don't just plan on how do I get the animal? That's great. But then after you get it, what do you do with it? Or what if you do if you can't find it? All right, guys, with that, we'll wrap up today's episode of Gunfighter Life. I hope you enjoyed this episode, whether you do or don't hunt. Like I said, I think it's something that you should at least try and have the skill set for, even if it's not something you want to do all the time. There's so many good skills in hunting that translate to so many other things like patience, like knowing how to walk quietly, like knowing how to read the land. There's something very satisfying about going into the wilderness with a weapon and taking an animal and bringing it back and putting food on the table for yourself and your family. Anyway, guys, hope you liked the episode. If you like this podcast, you may like a few others. Simple Man Sermons, if you like the important stuff, which is a relationship with God and Savior Jesus Christ, Simple Man Sermons. And the other one we do that's probably the most popular is the Alpha Male Podcast. Not just guns, but all things pertaining to manliness. How to be a good, strong, dominant alpha male made in the image of God. You can check that out. So Simple Man Sermons, the Alpha Male Podcast, and of course Gunfighter Life, which you're listening to. You can find all those under the umbrella of Good Shepherd Training, goodshepherdtraining.com. You can find Good Shepherd Training on Facebook, Good Shepherd Training on Instagram. If you want to support, because podcasts aren't free, you can go support on Patreon, Good Shepherd Training on Patreon. If you have any questions or want to submit a question or anything like that, you can get a hold of me at goodshepherdtraining.com. You can message me directly on there. Anyway, with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up and say thanks and have a blessed day.